This special edition of Photography Online is brought to you by Isle of Skye Distillers, home of Misty Isle Gin. Hello and welcome to the heart of the Isle of Skye. Over the past year, in our regular monthly shows, we've been counting down what we believe are the top 10 views on this island which we call home. We've had loads of requests to publish all of these in a dedicated video, so here it is. Throughout the show, I'll be throwing in a few fun facts all about Skye, so whether you're a Skye fan or have never visited before, stay tuned as there will be loads to learn. Okay, well, let's get started with view number 10. We start our countdown of the top 10 views on Skye with Loch Fada. This is one of the classic views on Skye, with rowing boats often moored at the southern end, a picturesque island complete with tree in the middle, and the mighty Storr and its Old Man at the northern end. If you look on a map, you'll see that Loch Fada and Loch Leithin are actually one body of water. Many people don't realise that both are man-made lochs, formed by a hydro dam at the northern end. Incidentally, the railway lines which transport workers from the top and the bottom of the dam is the only railway on Skye. Thought I'd mention that in case it ever comes up in a pub quiz. One of the major attractions of this location is the ease of access. It's literally right on the side of the A855, just a few miles north of Portree, Skye's principal town. And though you can get a semi-decent shot by leaning out of your car window, I definitely recommend parking and getting out to have a wander around. Pass through this gate and you'll get to this elevated view, which is the most popular to take photos of. What works from being up this high is that you can see water behind the island, which gives it separation. The best time to come here is really at dawn, when the first light of the morning illuminates the Storr in the background. It also increases the chances of finding a reflection on the water, which obviously this morning we don't have, but the light is fantastic, so I'm going to go down and have a wee wander around. As you walk lower down the bank towards the loch, you'll see that the island starts to get lost against the background, which means you lose one of the focal points in the scene. However, once you accept that the island isn't going to play a part in your composition, you can look for other subjects down by the water's edge. Small trees like this one can work well in the foreground of a photo. During winter, Loch Fada often freezes over, and this can result in some strange scenes occurring. With a mirror reflection and golden light hitting the hills, this will be one of the best views you're ever likely to see. It's probably not worth coming in the middle of the day, as the light will be behind you and there's very little chance of seeing calm, reflective waters. If you come here in the winter, this is a great place to watch the northern lights. With unobstructed views to the north, little light pollution and the night sky being reflected in the water, Loch Fada is the perfect place to enjoy the night sky with or without an aurora. Heading a little further down the road than our elevated viewpoint, it's worth exploring the rowing boats, which are moored here from May through to October. With their numbers, assuming they're in the right order, they make a great photographic subject. Once you've finished admiring the view over Loch Fada, you can either head north and climb the Storr, or you can head south to Portree for a relaxing coffee and cake. The Isle of Skye is one of the Hebridean islands which lies off the west coast of Scotland. These are split into the Inner and Outer Hebrides, with Skye being the largest of the Inner Hebrides. The region has its own language called Gaelic, not to be confused with the Irish language of the same spelling but different pronunciation. Skye's Gaelic name is Cuillin Scianach, but it's also known as Ellen Hio, which translates to Misty Isle, hence Misty Isle Gin. Many of the local landmarks have names in both Gaelic and English, but the view which we placed at number 9 only has a Gaelic name, Honish.
Number 9 on our top 10 list of views on Skye is the lesser-known location of Honish, or Honish Point. Located right in the very north of the island, it requires about a 45-minute hike to access. This is the furthest north you can drive in Skye, but you can actually go further north, but you need to walk there. Luckily there's a footpath just over here leading exactly where we want to go. Let's go.
The trail can be very muddy and boggy in places, especially if there's been lots of recent rain, so make sure you have suitable footwear. The path is otherwise good and is mostly flat for the first mile, until you reach a gate. From here, it gets a little steeper, but nothing too strenuous.
So although we can't see it from here, we're heading to the tallest point on the horizon, and when we get up there we'll find something quite interesting.
This building is the most northerly building on Skye and was originally a Coast Guard lookout hut, giving 180-degree views over the water around the north of the island.
Standing here and panning around the horizon, you've got the Isle of Harris over to the west, you have the Isle of Lewis to the north, and you can see mainland Scotland to the east. This is the very definition of a panoramic view.
Once you've had your fill of views from the lookout hut, this location is far from over. In fact, things are about to get a lot better.
Although it doesn't look like it from here, it's actually quite easy to get down to that lower peninsula over there, and that's where we're going to go to see the number 9 viewpoint on our top 10 list.
Following the cliff top to the west will lead you down into a shallow ravine. At the far side of this ravine is a gate next to a rock.
From here the path gets a little steep, so you want to have at least one hand free to grab hold of rocks, so I'm just going to put my camera back in my bag to give me that free hand.
From here, a steep but easy to navigate path zigzags down the cliff face, eventually bringing you out at the base of the cliffs. Once down on flat ground, it's time to explore this seldom visited peninsula. One of my favourite shots to take in this area is the sea stack, which can be perfectly framed by the foreground. I love the shape of this rock. It looks like something out of Thunderbirds. When the waves are crashing around its base, a long exposure can create some dramatic and atmospheric effects. Heading a little further around the coast reveals a sea arch which during the summer months is nesting with seabirds such as fulmar, shags and kittiwakes. A view from here back towards the cliffs is well worth taking before moving on.
This is the most northerly point of Skye. I can safely say that there's no one on Skye that's further north than I am right now.
Although the coastal views are very special, it's the view from the middle of the peninsula that we've really come to see.
So this is it, viewpoint number 9. The reason why I love this so much is because it's so untypical of Skye. It looks more like Australia or New Zealand, or maybe even somewhere in South Africa.
If you want to take the best photos here, you need to time your arrival with the end of the day when the setting sun out over the Outer Hebrides will illuminate the cliff face, which can often take on an orange or a red hue. If you get calm conditions to allow a reflection to be had on the water, then you'll be rewarded with an amazing image. Be aware that staying here until sunset will mean walking back in the dark, so make sure you bring a good head torch with fresh batteries. You could of course consider sleeping in the bothy, which will put you in the perfect location to watch the sunrise in just a few hours.
Starting from close to Honish and stretching for 20 miles southwards to the island's main town of Portree is the Trotternish Ridge. It's possible to walk the entire length, but only the fittest of hikers can do it in a single day. 4 of our top 10 locations are positioned along this ridge, so it's well worth exploring when you visit. 2 of these locations are well known, which we'll come to later in the countdown, but the view that we have at number 8 often goes under the radar of most visitors. Find out where that is in just a moment.
Number 8 on our top 10 list of views on Skye is Scur of Aatii. My sincere apologies to the Gaelic speaking community for my pronunciation. It's more commonly known as Hill of the Red Fox. If the name sounds familiar, it inspired the well-known novel of the same name by Alan Campbell MacLean. The Hill of the Red Fox is one of the major peaks along the Trotternish Ridge, and along with the more popular Quiraing, is the only point along the ridge which you can access by road.
Now, when I use the term road, I use that pretty loosely. It quickly deteriorates, there's plenty of potholes, lumps and bumps, so you need a suitable vehicle to get you to the other end. Otherwise you'll be walking the 3-mile round trip.
There isn't much photographic potential until you're near the end of the track, as you're too far away from the ridge. The first point of interest is where you cross the stream at this small bridge.
So it's only when you get this close that you get more of the imposing sense of this mountain. Now, the interest here is the river and how it looks like it's flowing directly from the mountain itself. This makes composition relatively straightforward. All we need to do is make sure we get nice and low, bringing this right into the foreground, and then having the river as a nice leading line up towards that epic ridge line.
However, the main attraction of Hill of the Red Fox lies at the end of the track, where my favourite viewpoints can be found. The ground underfoot can be very wet here, so a good pair of sturdy waterproof boots are thoroughly recommended in order to get to the best points. There are 2 lochs here, both left over from open mine pits from when diatomite was quarried here and taken by train to the coast. You can still make out the train line from the air.
And a few remaining structures like this one hint at its industrial past, though it's hard to believe on a tranquil day like today.
The best time to visit is on a calm morning, when there's usually an epic reflection on the lochs. The smaller of the 2 is quite sheltered, so even if there's a ripple on the larger loch, it's still worth checking out the smaller one, which is just out of sight around the corner.
This has got to be one of my favourite views on Skye. I mean, look at that. It's a bit of an injustice to call it a hill. It's a mountain. Now, it's all about the reflection here. Perfectly crystal clear.
As the sun gets a little higher, reaching down towards the bottom of the hill, it starts to illuminate a rather alien-looking landscape, if you're standing in the right place, of course. The way these tussocks of grass catch the light at an angle in the morning really reveals their form and shape. Walking further towards the hills will eventually lead you back to the stream, where it runs down a steep bank. In the summer, flowering foxgloves make the perfect foreground, with the mountain providing the drama in the distance. A true hidden gem, Hill of the Red Fox remains under most people's radar. Get here for dawn on any calm morning in the summer, and you'll be duly rewarded for your effort.
Finally, it's worth remembering that this area is quite remote and there's not much phone signal. So if you're going to lock your keys in your car, best not to do it here. Just kidding.
Staying on the Trotternish Ridge, but moving a few miles to the north, we get to an area known as the Quiraing. It's the only place along the ridge which you can drive to, which is one of the reasons that it's so popular. But another, as you're about to see, are its amazing views. The Quiraing has its own car park, and most visitors don't venture more than a few hundred metres from this. The Quiraing is actually situated a mile to the north of the car park, so most people who think they've been to the Quiraing have actually only seen the view from the car park, which is epic in itself. But let us show you what the Quiraing is really about.
One of the main attractions for both photographers and hikers who visit Skye is an area known as the Quiraing. It's a unique landscape formed by Europe's largest landslide, which is continuing to move today. Any visit to the Quiraing is most likely to start here at the upper car park. Luckily, I'm already at 250 metres above sea level, so most of the climbing aspects has already been done in the car. A clearly defined path leads north from the car park and the world-class views start almost immediately. The temptation is to head straight up between the impressive rocks which will now be above you, but if you follow my route, there's an easier way up and we'll end up coming back down that way so you won't miss any views. We're ultimately heading for a hidden area known as the Table, but I'm keen to show you another couple of locations which you'll need to pass, so consider this a 3-in-1 bonus. The first viewpoint I'm going to show you is one which the Photography Online team discovered a few years ago and named it Breathless Point. Partly for the fact when you arrive you'll be totally breathless.
What are you talking about?
And for the views which are, well, breathtaking.
You can't deny this is an amazing view. It's such a unique landscape, you won't find it anywhere else in the world.
This view works all year round, but only in the morning. During the winter months, the sun will be in your 5 o'clock position. This wouldn't usually be desirable, but at this location it shines through a small gap in the rocks to illuminate the wall on the right, the only time in the year when you can get decent light on the foreground. Once you've bagged a few shots at Breathless Point, continue up the steep path. Other views will tempt you to get the camera out again, so this is the kind of location which just keeps giving.
So I'm now at the base of the table, which is just over here, and that's as high as we're going to go. It's quite tricky to get to on this side, so we're going to go on the other side and sneak in through the back door.
The appeal of the Table is that it doesn't reveal itself until you literally step foot onto it. I love bringing people here and watching their reaction as they step onto this hidden plateau guarded by imposing peaks in all directions. Very few people come here, so you can expect to have the place to yourself. There are views to both the north and the south, so take your pick depending on what the light is doing.
Standing here, you get a real sense of Europe's largest landslip, which has created the unique landscape you see around me. This plateau used to be up there as part of the ridge. However, the underlying support is falling away to the east, causing this table to drop down. You can get a real sense of this from up in the air.
Each year the table drops by around 1 centimetre, so the longer you leave it before you visit, the less you'll have to climb. We now need to head back to the car park, but there's one more surprise before we rejoin the path we took on the way here. Rather than retracing our steps, we're going to see an impressive rock formation which is often mistaken in photos for Skye's most iconic landmark, the Old Man of Storr, which is actually 10 miles to the south.
As you crest this ridge, you get your first view of the Needle. However, the walk down from here is quite steep, so it's not really for those who are uncomfortable with heights. Luckily, that's not me.
Due to the marbly texture of the ground, the path is far more slippery when dry than it is when damp or wet.
This location doesn't work in the summer because by the time the light hits the Needle, the sun's too high in the sky and the light's too harsh. It works best between September and April, just after dawn.
When you've finished taking your award-winning shots of the Needle, continue down the path which gets less steep from here following the base of the cliff. There are frequent rockfalls from these cliffs, so don't stop for a picnic at the base of the wall. keep moving towards the south until you see the car park come into view. Shortly after this, the path will dogleg back to the north and down to join the main path you came in on. From here, it's just a case of retracing your steps back to the car, continuing to admire what must be some of the best views anywhere in the world.
So I'm here at a place called Sligahin, which is considered to be the heart of the island because from here you can get pretty much everywhere in less than an hour's drive. Now one of the furthest places from here is a small peninsula with a lighthouse which forms the most westerly part of the island. And in a moment we'll be heading there for our number 6 view, but before that I wanted to tell you about this mountain here. It is called Bla Bheinn and it's a very imposing mountain. The story goes that back in 1899 a Gurkha was visiting the island to do some climbing. Obviously he fancied some exercise, so he decided to go for a run up and down the top of Bla Bheinn. He did it in 1 hour and 15 minutes, something which the local laird, MacLeod of MacLeod, refused to believe when it was told to him. So, in order to solve it, he offered to go up again. He did it, apparently barefoot, and shaved 20 minutes off his time, setting a record of 55 minutes that stood until the 1980s. Every year what's known as the Bla Bheinn Hill Race takes place, where a bunch of runners with thighs of steel take themselves up to the top of the mountain and down again as fast as they can. So, next time that you're passing here, look up and imagine yourself getting up and back down from the hotel car park and you'll realise what an amazing feat that was, not to mention doing it barefoot. Alright, well let's head west and join Nick Hansen again for view number 6.
Number 6 of our top 10 views on Skye is Neist Point. Most people come here to see the lighthouse, but for photographers it is the location of the lighthouse rather than the building itself which is a real attraction.
This car park here at Neist Point is the furthest west you can drive in the UK without getting on a ferry. Only the Outer Hebrides are further than that, making this an ideal location to watch the sunset.
From the car park it's not possible to see the lighthouse, but there is an inviting path leading steeply downhill which meanders over the horizon to where the lighthouse is situated. Most visitors make a beeline straight down this path, but if you want the best view of Neist Point, then you really don't want to be going down that way. As I mentioned before, it's the lighthouse's setting which is the real attraction, and to see and appreciate this, you need to head out to the west along the cliff top. After just a couple of minutes, the lighthouse comes into view, and you start to get a flavour of what you're about to see. In my opinion, the best time to visit is between May and July, when the sun sets way around to the northwest, and if the skies are clear on the horizon, the cliffs get lit up with gorgeous warm light, the only time they receive direct sunlight in the entire year. Ideally, you want to have a good amount of cloud overhead, but with a clear patch to the west to allow the sunlight to burst through. The tides are pretty much irrelevant here, but if you can time your visit for when there is good motion in the water, you'll get a nice white key line at the base of the cliffs which really helps them stand out.
This location works at any time of the year, but only really in the evening. If you're here in the morning, the sun's rising right behind you, which is not great. If you're here in the winter, you're pointing the camera pretty much into the sun as the sun sets. However, if you get a great sky afterwards, make a heck of a difference. In the summer, however, that's really the best time. The sun's setting at your 3 o'clock position, so it can cast this really nice light on the cliff sides, which can be brilliant.
Expect to do lots of waiting around for those brief moments of perfect light, But one of the good things about Neist Point is that it's one of the UK's best locations to see whales and dolphins from the shore, so trying to spot them in the vast area of water really helps pass the time. Once you finish admiring or photographing the view, it will most likely be getting quite dark, but the car park is only a 5-minute walk away, so you won't need a head torch. The drive back to your accommodation may take a while though, and there are no fuel stations nearby which will be open, so don't arrive with low supplies or else you'll be sleeping in the car.
I presented our October 2020 show from Neist Point, so if you want to see what the lighthouse looks like close up, as well as a few other views of the area, then check out that show if you haven't already seen it. With Skye being an island, it's only natural that many of its best views are going to be found along the coast. Our next view is no exception and looks out across the water onto the other side of the black Cuillin mountains that you can see here. If there was a road through this glen, then we could be there in just a few minutes, but to get there we need to take a rather long diversion to head in on the only road that does exist. This, however, takes us past some other locations well worthy of stopping at, as we're about to find out in just a few moments.
One of the most popular locations to find tripods set up on Skye is along the shoreline near the small fishing harbour of Elgol. Elgol lies at the end of a 15-mile single-track road which starts in the town of Broadford. My tip for anyone wanting to head to Elgol is to leave far more time than you think the journey will take, as there is plenty to see along the way, and if the light is good, you'll be stopping every couple of minutes to get out the car and to take photos of the surrounding scenery.
The first photo opportunity to look out for is this Loch Christ, better known to some as the Hairy Loch. There are some brilliant opportunities here if the conditions are right. We've got the reeds in the foreground, we've got the hill, and we have some trees on an island there. Even if there's a significant breeze like we do today, then you can still get a reflection on the water. You can get some great wide angle shots or get artsy with the reflections and the reeds moving.
Just a couple of words of safety. First of all, there is nowhere to park, so the urge is to occupy this passing place. Please don't park in passing places as it can cause traffic problems, especially as we're on a blind bend. Secondly, you'll be shooting from the edge of the road with your back to any oncoming traffic. It's easy to get submersed in the moment and not be aware of what's passing behind you. A little further down the road, literally just a couple more minutes, you'll pass this copse of trees on the left, which can be well worth stopping at.
Now here you have lots of options. You can get up close to the tree with a nice wide focal length, or you can stand further back and use a longer lens. Either way, be sure to spend plenty of time exploring. There's lots of foreground potential and lots of possible compositions.
Continuing towards Elgol, the road follows the shore along Loch Slappin, which can offer some excellent views across the water to the mountain of Bla Bheinn. The road crosses the head of the loch before hugging the western coastline for another couple of miles.
When you get to this point in the road, watch out for a lone tree with the dominating backdrop of Bla Bheinn. It works best from nearer the road rather than closer to the tree, but watch out for the overhead power cables. Now the light isn't quite right today, so I'm going to carry on down to Elgol.
Shortly after leaving the tree, the road starts to climb and leaves the shore as it heads across the centre of the Strath-Aird Peninsula. As you reach the highest point, just a couple of miles short of Elgol, keep an eye out for the local resident Highland cows, which are often grazing by the side of the road and cause passing tourists to stop for Instagram photos.
If you do stop here along this section of road, then just make sure to park your car responsibly so it doesn't impede the flow of traffic.
As you crest the next hill, the Isle of Rum will come into view and you'll start to get a sense of what awaits you. The road now drops steeply into the tiny fishing harbour of Elgol, where there is usually ample parking around sunrise and sunset, but it's often very busy during the day in the peak summer months.
So here you have it, view number 5. As you can see, the views really do start right from the car park. It's perfectly possible to get good shots right from here, but for the proper photography, we're going to head down onto the shore there and find some foreground.
If you visit Elgol during the summer months, the sun will set just to the left of the mountains, whereas in the winter months it will be 90 degrees to the left. But this can provide some great side lighting, which brings out the texture and form of the distant peaks. Although most photographers will head to Elgol for sunset, this location works just as well at dawn, but the long journey to get here puts many off arriving in the dark.
This is Honeycomb Rock, named for obvious reasons. It provides a popular subject with which to frame the mountains behind.
Continuing further than this requires a bit of rock hopping, but nothing that will cause most people any problems. It's certainly worth making the effort as you suddenly find yourself in a different landscape with unlimited foreground possibilities. My suggestion is to arrive with enough time to explore the area properly, so that you can decide which exact location floats your boat the most. You can then return to your favourite position for when the light is at its best.
One of the more popular foreground features here at Elgol is this round boulder. It works to great effect if you position it well in frame, but you need water lapping around the edges. For this, you need a very high tide, and this only coincides with sunrise or sunset a few times a year.
A word of warning. If you do find yourself here on an incoming tide, it is possible that you can get temporarily cut off from the car park. This only happens on a very high tide though, and you won't need to wait long for the water to subside again, but it's worth keeping in mind. The view from Elgol, with the mountains rising straight out of the water, is absolutely world class. And that's why it's number 5 on our top 10 viewpoints on Skye.
We'll be back at Elgol later in the show when we get the boat to our number 2 location in the heart of the Cuillin Mountains, so stick around for that. If you're watching our channel for the first time, then we produce a monthly show from our base here on Skye where we explain camera skills, review equipment and give away some great prizes, so check those out to see even more of the island. Incidentally, the Cuillin, which you can see here, are the UK's only true alpine environment. Nowhere else in the UK will you find mountains which resemble, well, mountains, and climbers come here to train for ascent of the Himalaya, Andes and other challenging peaks of the world. The Cuillin featured in a few of our locations, but none more so than in our number 4 view.
Now, I don't know how this has happened, but as soon as the production team revealed that this mountain was our number 4 viewpoint on Skye, all of a sudden all the other team members miraculously became unavailable. Marcus said he had to renew his membership at the local bingo hall. Harry said he had an appointment at the ladies' hair salon. Ruth, well, she suddenly claimed she's afraid of heights. So I guess it's up to me to climb this 3,048-foot mountain. Still, I suppose it's not all that bad. I'm still well above sea level. Well, 4 foot above sea level. So only 3,044 feet to go then. I guess I better get on with it. The Highlands of Scotland is a mountainous area, and all the peaks over 3,000 feet are known as Munros, after the mountaineer Sir Hugh Munro first documented all 283 of them. Only 13 of these are outside mainland Scotland. Skye has 12, and these are considered the most challenging to summit. Renew my membership at the bingo hall, honestly. Incidentally, the only Munro outside mainland Scotland which isn't on Skye is Ben More on the Isle of Mull, just in case it comes up in a general knowledge quiz. There are a couple of obvious routes to the summit of Bla Bheinn. The one I am taking is the shortest but steepest and starts from the John Muir car park on the shores of Loch Slappin.
Look out for the scenic waterfall, which is less than half an hour into the hike, as it can be well worth stopping for a photo. A word of warning, you'll need to cross this river, which can be quite deep after significant rainfall, so bear this in mind. The steepest part of this route doesn't start until later in the ascent, leaving the first part of the trail to fool you into a false sense that you're doing reasonably well.
Appointment at the hair salon. You're better off going to the dog groomers.
The views to the south get grander as you gain altitude, but the view we have come to see is to the north. This will only reveal itself once we reach the ridge, but this does add to the sense of anticipation. Expect the ascent to the summit to take around 3 hours, and expect to want to quit several times on the way. But if there's one thing that will keep you going, then it's this.
Now that's an impressive view, truly world class.
It would be easy to look at this view and assume it was somewhere in the Alps, especially in the winter months when much of the scene is covered in snow.
This, however, is just a small island off the west coast of Scotland. But with views like this, it's easy to see why it attracts so many photographers from all over the world.
Of the 12 Munros in Skye, 11 of them are all on the line, stretched out along the Cuillin ridge. It's possible to conquer all 11 in a single day, but most people take 2. Bla Bheinn, the one I am standing on, is the only one not on the main ridge, but this is one of the reasons it provides such epic views.
Down there is Glen Slugachan, which cuts through the centre of the Cuillin, a huge extinct volcano, dividing it between the black and red peaks. The black peaks are formed from gabbro and basalt and are jagged and rough in appearance, whereas the reds are formed from granite and are more rounded and smooth.
Of all 283 Munros in Scotland, the most difficult is aptly named the Inaccessible Pinnacle, or the In Pin if you want to sound cool.
From here you can just about see it, a sharp splinter of rock sticking up.
With its 360-degree panoramic views, you'll be spoilt for choice when deciding which direction to point your lens in. My favourite views are to the north, as the peaks are closer and therefore less affected by atmospheric haze.
My advice would be to look for features such as these rocks, which you can shoot through and frame the distant view nicely. If you shoot the distant view on its own, the image can look very two-dimensional.
The views go on, and you'll want to stay forever. But once you've filled up your memory cards, it'll be time to say goodbye and start the long descent back to the car park.
I'm definitely glad I managed to get out of presenting that one. Now, as well as all these amazing views which naturally attract photographers from all over the world, Skye has lots more to offer anyone who visits. The distilleries and the breweries will keep fans of the wet stuff happy. We have Scotland's oldest continuously inhabited castle, which we featured in our October 2020 show, if you want to check that out, and a number of cottage industries too, selling everything from artwork to clothing and sheepskins to homemade confectionery, much of which can be ordered online, making it easy to get a piece of Skye wherever you are in the world. There are also some great hotels, restaurants and cafes too, and we've put links to some of our favourites in the description below, so do check those out before you plan a visit. Now, one place which is probably on most visitors' agenda is a trip to see the island's most iconic landmark. We put this as our number 3 view, and we'll go there in just a few moments.
Our number 3 location on the Isle of Skye is without doubt the most iconic of all landmarks on Skye, if not Scotland. With over 200,000 visitors each year, it can only be the Old Man of Storr.
You thought this was going to be number 1, didn't you? Go on, you did, didn't you? Admit it.
You don't need to climb up the well-trodden trail to see the Old Man of Storr, as it can be seen from many miles away. In fact, it featured in the background in our number 10 location when Ruth kicked off our countdown at Loch Fada way back in January. Climbing the 500 metres up to one of the elevator viewpoints will probably see you duly rewarded, and the prize for the eyes is right there in front of you, beckoning you onwards and upwards.
If you've come to Storr to take photographs and you want to get here about an hour before dawn, expect the walk to take 30 to 90 minutes, slightly longer if you're not that fit.
The walk up is straightforward, but does get steep in places. Once you crest the first hill, the Old Man itself comes into view, although it often blends in with the background and is easily missed. The mountain itself is called Storr, and the famous standing rock which lies in its shadow is what's known as the Old Man. There are other surrounding rocks of various shapes and sizes too, and collectively these are known as the Sanctuary. Some have specific names, such as Needle Rock and the Cathedral. The rocks make for great silhouettes, so my advice for your first photo stop would be from somewhere between the cliff face and the rocks themselves. The position of the rising sun varies hugely here, depending on the time of year, so there's not one specific place to recommend.
Make sure you stay well away from the base of the cliffs. There's daily rock falls, and if one of those falls on your head, it's probably going to ruin your day. This poor chap didn't heed my advice.
Once you've got a silhouette shot of the rocks against the pre-dawn sky, you want to keep heading north along the path, ready for when the first direct light hits the scene.
Most photographers, when they come to Storr, will end up standing here, which is why we know it as Photographer's Mound. But this spot isn't ideal. The cathedral overlaps the Old Man of Storr slightly and we don't get any separation. The pinnacles also break the skyline just a little bit. Our number 3 location requires just a little bit more climbing, so follow me.
Continue along the path and over this stile. This feels wrong as you'll now lose sight of the very scene you want to be shooting, but fear not, when it comes back into view, it will be so much better.
Once you get to the ridge here, you want to aim for the rocks just up at the top there. As you close in on them, prepare to have your breath taken away. Well, granted you can see the view that is, but let's give it a go anyway. There it is, view number 3. If you get here and the cloud does come down, don't despair. Make sure you're patient, wrap up, and you may well be rewarded.
If you get good light here, it could be the best photo you'll ever take. In the summer months, it is not unusual to get an inversion layer here, and in winter months, it's often dusted with snow. With the Cuillin Mountains as a backdrop, this truly is a world-class view.
Once you snap your award-winning shots from up there, you have a couple of options. You can return via the same path and get in amongst the pinnacles, as there's endless compositional opportunities. Or if you're feeling fit, you can go up over the summit and down the other side. But I'm not going to do that today because I wouldn't see anything.
Don't take all the photos though. Leave some for the day tourists who'll start to flood the area from around 9 AM, so you want to be done and dusted by then.
The Isle of Skye appeals mostly to outdoor enthusiasts, and with such an amazing diversity of environments such as mountains, beaches, moorland, coastline and woodland, there are a number of local businesses which cater for all sorts of activities. So whether you want to go whale watching, wild swimming, rock climbing, kayaking, hiking, eagle and otter spotting, wild camping, or even if you want to improve your photography with a local pro, there are enough options to keep even the most enthusiastic of visitors occupied. As I mentioned before, there are links to some of these in the description down below, so do check those out. Alright, well, continuing our countdown with our number 2 location, this one is the remotest and most difficult to access, so appreciate that comfy chair you're sitting in while we get one of our team to do the dirty work.
If you wanted to get to the remotest part of Skye, the furthest place from any road, then you would do well to find a better candidate than Loch Coruisk. Nestled in the heart of the Cuillin Mountains, there are 2 ways you can reach this hidden gem, by boat or by a rather long hike.
Today I'm doing both, getting the boat in and then hiking back out.
Boat services run from the village of Elgol, which featured as a number 5 location in our July show, and take around 30 minutes for the journey across Loch Skye, but the views on the way across are breathtaking.
The boat will drop you off at this small jetty, and if you bought a return ticket, we'll pick you up later. Just make sure you don't miss the last sailing, or you'll have a long walk back to your car.
Even being this close to Loch Coruisk, it stays hidden until you follow the path along what is generally acknowledged as Britain's shortest river. It only comes into view as you literally stumble across it.
As you can see, Loch Coruisk is surrounded by mountains in almost every direction, which is why it's so difficult to get to. Though this is the subject of our number 2 view in Skye, we need to reach the top of that mountain there to appreciate what makes it so special.
The mountain in question is called Skirnastree, and the good news is that out of all of the mountains that surround Loch Coruisk, this one is the smallest. The bad news is that it's also the steepest. At only 497 metres, it's half the height of the peaks to the west of the loch, but to access the top we need to corkscrew around its northern face. The first major obstacle you could face is crossing the top of the Skye River. It might be the shortest river in the UK, but it's certainly not the narrowest, and after heavy rainfall can be impassable.
Loch Coruisk collects all of the runoff water from all of the mountains here, which means that its height can rise by more than 1 metre in a very short space of time. When this happens, this rather tranquil looking river can become a raging torrent of white water, and the stepping stones can be nowhere to be seen.
If you can't cross the river, then the only way round is to walk the entire perimeter of the loch, which will take you a couple of hours. So if you do want to come to see this view, it's best not to do it after a bout of heavy rain. Most of the time, however, it's perfectly safe to make this crossing, and once done, it's simply a case of following the path around the eastern side of the loch.
I'm now standing directly below the viewpoint we've come to see. However, we need to head that way before doubling back along the ridge.
The path follows this burn, which can provide some good potential for photos in the right conditions, so it's worth keeping your eyes open here. start to gain height quickly, with the path becoming quite steep in places, but the views get better with every metre climbed.
There are a number of ideal locations along the way to stop for a rest. Sitting here you can admire the view and the isolation. It's a perfect place to gather your thoughts and ponder life in general. For example, I'm wondering why I've been given yet another viewpoint which requires a long uphill walk. Ruth, well, she got Loch Fada, which is right by the roadside. Harry, he got Elgol, which you can shoot from the car park. And Marcus, well, he did Honish, which is at sea level. I was given Bla Bheinn, which is a big monster of a mountain somewhere over there. I need to have a word with my agent.
Once you reach the ridge, the views open up and the path becomes far less demanding. The view we have come to see today has often been described as Britain's best view, which is quite a reputation to live up to, but once you see it, it won't disappoint. With unobstructed views right down the centre of Loch Coruisk, and with the mighty Cuillin Ridge as a backdrop, who can possibly argue that this is not the best view in Britain?
Well, I can, as we still have our number one view to reveal, but you can see why this has a reputation for holding the top spot. It's truly breathtaking.
Sit and admire the view all day, but at some point you'll have to leave, and this is where you have two options. The first is to backtrack the way I came and get the boat back to Elgol. Useful if you've left your car there, or you can walk out back to the north through Glenslaghin until you emerge 5 miles later at the hotel for a much needed beer.
So we've come to the number one view, but before I reveal what it is, I want to tell you about this. It's the Photographer's Guide to Skye, which lists the top 50 locations to visit with your camera, including how to get to each one, when is best to visit, and what to expect when you get there. It comes in both digital download or hard copy and is available from the dedicated link in the description down below. Now, the moment that we've been anticipating since the start of the show, the best view on Skye. To see it, we need to head back to the Trotternish Ridge, which is exactly what we'll do in just a moment.
This is not the number one view on Skye. So it's finally come to this, our number one location. Now, you might recognise this car park because it's where we started our journey when we did our number 7 location, and that was in that direction. But this time we're going to go in that direction. Now, don't get me wrong, that direction's fantastic, but this direction's even better. The walk from the Quiraing car park is uphill from the start, which probably puts a lot of people off. But for those who are willing to make the effort, the rewards can be fruitful. I first discovered the view we are heading to a few years ago and have been returning regularly ever since. I've yet to see another person here, as no one really knows about it, so for goodness sake, let's keep this between me and you.
This is not the best view in Skye.
It is, however, one of the many bonus views you'll get along the way. This view of the Hill of Cleet, surrounded by 3 lochs, is one of the many epic views which will have you reaching for the camera, But don't get too distracted here or you'll jeopardise the best light at the main attraction. To see the best view on Skye, we need to continue onwards and upwards.
Look at that. This is still not the best viewpoint on Skye. It's just easing us into what lies ahead up there.
This is Dundoo, which looks like a huge wedge of cheese, or, if you have a sweet tooth, cheesecake. This plays a central role in our best view, but not from this angle.
To see the best view on Skye, we're going to be looking at those rocks there, but from the other side, and then we'll have the famous Quiraing as the background. But to get there, we need to head up over this hill here, which is known locally as the Bia Booya, which means Yellow Hill. Just after coming over the summit, instead of following the ridge line, we're going to take a sharp left and head steeply downhill because this is where the viewpoint's at.
Whatever you do when walking down this slope, do not run. Even if the light is epic and you think you may miss it, if you pick up momentum down here, you aren't going to be able to stop, and there's a nasty surprise waiting for you at the bottom. Fall down there, and it's most likely going to ruin your day. Take care here, keep the cliff edge to your left, and get ready to be greeted by the view to surpass all views.
How about that as a view then, eh? Gotta admit it, it's good, isn't it? So here we have the two rocks that we were referring to earlier. We're now looking at them from the other side. And I call these the guardians because it's like they're kind of soldiers guarding the cliff. And behind it we've got the world famous Quiraing, but we're looking at it from a new angle which gives a whole new perspective.
Although this location works all year round, it's best from March to October, when the rising sun will cast shadows of the guardians onto the cliff face. If you're lucky, they may also be dusted with snow during the winter months. In the summer months you'll be shooting into the light, but there's the possibility of an inversion layer, which adds yet another appeal to this scene.
One of the great things about photographing from this viewpoint is that it works in just about every format. You can shoot it wide, you can shoot it telephoto, you can go landscape, you can go portrait, you can go square, you can go panoramic. Basically, it's really difficult to mess this up. Even the likes of Nick and Harry would be able to get a good shot from here.
Once you've finished admiring the views and taking award-winning shots, make your way back up to the top of the hill. From here, it's downhill all the way to the car park, where you'll be back amongst the crowds. You, however, will have that contented smirk on your face, knowing that only you saw the best view. Everyone else only saw the great views.
Well, there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this countdown of the top 10 views on Skye and that it's earned a place on your wish list or even your return list. If you do plan on visiting, don't forget to check out all the links to the various businesses which we've included in the links section below. Thanks as well to Isle of Skye Distillers, home of Misty Isle Gin, for sponsoring the special Top 10 Views of Skye show. And lastly, thanks to you for watching. I'll see you soon.